The opinions expressed during this show are not necessarily those of this station, its employees, or advertisers, but are solely the opinions of the host and the guests that appear on the show. It's time now for Tea Party Talk with TomZ, hosted by Tom Zawistowski, president of the We the People Convention and executive director of the Portage County Tea Party. Get ready to become a totally engaged American who is informed about the critical issues that are affecting the welfare and individual rights of all Americans today.
S&K Asphalt and Concrete has been serving residential, commercial, and industrial customers since 1988 with quality paving services. The experts at S&K Asphalt and Concrete have the knowledge and experience to meet your paving needs. From parking lots to driveways to repairs and resurfacing, S&K paves the way. Call today for a free estimate. 330-724-9090. That's 330-724-9090. Or visit online at skasphaltconcrete.com.
Are you concerned about your family's safety? Now, Target Thing Pro Shop is a female-friendly gun shop, range, and training center. Target Thing is in Garrettsville. We're on the web at targetthing.com. Target Thing is where they offer guns, ammo, and training to help you keep your family safe. It's Target Thing Pro Shop.
Fed up with politicians who care more about special interests than people on Main Street? So is Opportunity Ohio. We're working hard to solve Ohio's toughest challenges so Ohioans can create more jobs to grow our economy. See our plans and consider a tax-deductible contribution at opportunityohio.org. Invest $25 for a signed copy of Matt Mayer's book, The Founding Debate, Where Should the Power Over Our Lives Reside? Please visit opportunityohio.org.
All right, and good morning. Thank you for taking your valuable time to join us on Tea Party Talk with Tom Z. We're awful glad to have you with us, whether it's on Wednesday mornings at 10:30 a.m. when we're streaming the show live as we record it at teapartytalkwithtomz.com, or if it is on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock from 9 to 9:30 on WHLO 640 in Akron, Ohio, which has a very powerful signal, as you all know, reaching parts of western Pennsylvania, Michigan, Indiana, and 66 of the 88 counties in Ohio. And you can always listen on iHeartRadio at www.640whlo.com. We're, again, very thankful that you've joined us this morning, and we are once again glad to have a good friend of the show with us. We've got Greg Lawson from the Buckeye Institute, who's been with us many times and kind of is our expert on what's going on here in the state of Ohio. Greg, thanks for joining us again this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be on with you.
Well, the governor just proposed his budget, on Monday, and most people in the state, and particularly the Tea Party movement, haven't had a lot of time to figure out what's actually in it. And folks, the Buckeye Institute is your go-to source. If you go to buckeyeinstitute.org, you can look at the statistics there. The Ohio by the numbers will tell you what's going on in our state as far as jobs and what the spending levels are and what the incomes are and things like that. So, Greg, thank you for taking the time on such short notice to kind of educate us about the governor's budget proposal. And I guess that let's start off by just saying, give us the things that have come to your attention, the highlights and the lowlights, as it were.
Sure. Well, and the first thing is that the document that we've seen is over 700 pages, and this is what they call the Blue Book, which is the governor's initial proposal, but we don't actually have any of the budget language in terms of the bill format. So the actual legislation hasn't yet dropped. So we don't see some of the specific language dealing with some of the policies that he's trying to implement through the budget. So, there'll be a lot more thumbing through and looking through, and that document will probably be way over 1,000 pages. So we're still at the very beginning of a long process, because this will last through June of this year before we get a final budget done by the time it gets through the two chambers. But in terms of highlights, the governor, we think is holding true to his long-standing principle that he wants to shift from an income-based tax system to a more consumption-based tax system, in this case the sales tax. He thinks that's a more pro-growth way of rendering the tax code. As a general philosophical matter, we actually tend to agree with that. When you look at economic literature, what you'll find is income taxation is one of the least pro-growth types of taxes that you can have. And the sales tax and consumption taxes is more pro-growth, because it's essentially saying people can choose whether they spend or don't spend because you're usually exempting core things like certain types of medication or food and stuff like that. So it doesn't disincentivize people from working, and it doesn't disincentivize business owners from developing capital. So that's the theory behind it. We think that's true when you look at states like Texas, when you look at states like Florida, that typically have better economies than Ohio does. They typically have lower tax rates or no income tax in those two cases. So we give kind of a one-handed clap for this because it's philosophically going in the right direction. However, and here's where the caveats start coming in, he is doing this by shifting taxes pretty dramatically around. He's not just going to the sales tax. And by the way, he's going to expand the sales tax base and raise the sales tax by 0.5%. So right now we're at, I think it's 5.75. It would go up a full 0.5% to over 6%. If you were getting a bigger tax cut on the income side, that might be understandable. But we're still going to have an income tax, even after the whole thing is phased in, of over 4% at the top rate. So I'm not sure that it makes sense to do the wholesale sales tax expansion and increase at this particular time. And even beyond that, he's also looking to raise the cigarette tax by a whole $1 a pack, so it's a dramatic increase there, which is going to impact certain individuals more than others. Particularly, it has a disproportionate impact on lower-income folks who that it takes a much bigger chunk out of their pocket than it does for folks at other levels of the income spectrum. He's going to raise a business tax called the commercial activities tax, and this is a gross receipts tax that businesses pay supposedly for the privilege of doing business in Ohio. It's been around since the mid-2000s. The whole goal was to have a very low rate so it wasn't too problematic for businesses, but to tax a lot of their transactions. And this is a problematic tax by its very nature because it taxes people no matter whether they make a profit or not. So he's now going to be increasing that. We think that's definitely a problem. And he's going after oil and gas in a big way again in this budget, as he has several times previously. He's going, pardon the pun, but he's going to the well again here. Unfortunately, he's actually upping the ante, and he's going to do 6.5% of what they call the spot market price, which is it's basically what the market will pay for the good, in this case the natural gas or the oil in the particular market. So it's a much higher rate now than what he had proposed previously that the General Assembly had balked at in the past. So he's going all in on that, which not only do we think that's a bad move in good times, in case anybody's noticed, it's a good thing for consumers, but the oil price has gone way down here. The price per barrel is now, around $50 or under $50. We're seeing people not investing now in Ohio already because of the market conditions. So now you're going to add this additional cost to them. This is already proving to not be a big oil play, which is where you get more money than natural gas. So there's already been some decisions made not to continue investing. You add these costs, it's going to just make that decision all the easier for businesses not to come in and not to explore, and that could be a real hit to those areas of Ohio that have been seeing booms. They've been seeing their property values going up because of the presence of the shale, and it's certainly going to impact the people directly employed in the industry, but also in the other services around the industry, like the steel guys, which has started to come back a little bit up in Youngstown to do pipeline for this. So we think that's a pretty bad idea. We've long thought it's a bad idea, and the fact that he's upping the ante on it really is unfortunate.
Well, Greg, that's a great analysis. Those are really the high points of it, and I think I was struck by what you were struck by, the aggressiveness of the governor. I mean, these are not small jumps. When you talk about raising the taxes on a pack of cigarettes, folks, it's going from $1 to $2.25. That's huge. When you talk about the severance tax on the oil and gas, it's going from 2.75 to 6.5. The aggressiveness on the sales tax and the expansion of it into industries that were previously not taxed, is really concerning. And you know, we call that picking winners and losers, Greg. I mean, that's the thing we don't like, is that government decides who they like. If you're on their favorite list, you get a break, and if not, you get screwed. And that's really a problem. But the other thing that struck me was this whole idea of the Medicaid, and this quote unquote softness, Greg. It's for people like us in the Tea Party who are against raising taxes. And don't get it wrong, folks. The state budget continues to grow with this whole thing. There's no cutting of anything. There's just shifting. But this idea of charging people who are getting Medicaid or Medicare, $20, to continue getting it. Greg, that's just a joke. I mean, $20 is nothing. What does it cost us to pay for their health care through the, and I know a lot of it's federal money, but it's just a joke, isn't it?
Well, first of all, the Medicaid expansion was a bad idea when it was first proposed. It was a bad idea throughout the whole debate, and it was bad when they actually did it. And, we all know that the governor circumvented the full General Assembly by going to the controlling board and accepting the federal dollars in that way. We still think it's a bad idea. We think that we've been talking to legislators about why it's going to continue to be a problem as the population grows. I would say that it's bad that it's there. It's the way that they've structured the budget, or the way they will. We understand that they're going to be structuring the budget language. The legislature actually will not be voting even on the expansion.
Yeah, don't you love that? That's great.
Because what they've essentially done is, by appropriating the money, they're saying that the legislature will have to actually intentionally act to strip the funding out. And what the governor is saying is, we've already done this. We've already expanded it. If you strip the funding out that you get from the feds, you're actually bankrupting the pre-existing Medicaid program prior to the Medicaid. So basically, we're going to continue paying for the expansion population, but we're going to do it without the federal funds, and there's no way you can do the nursing homes, the home care, the other stuff like that. So he is sort of he's essentially putting the legislature in a very intense bind as to how they operate that, and he has doubled down and tripled down on this. I will say, as one very small silver lining, and it is small because the overall policy is not correct, but the copay element is one piece that may make some moderate improvement. The idea is you're trying to train, essentially, the director of OBM, the Office of Budget and Management, that helps produce the budget for the governor, said yesterday in Finance Committee hearings that this is about training people who historically don't have interactions with private insurance, how to pay copays and to deal with that, because what their idea is, and we can discuss whether or not this is very likely to occur, but their hope is, in a variety of different job training and things that they're doing in other parts of the budget, they're trying to actually get people to only be on Medicaid temporarily. Obviously, we think that's a good thing. We don't think it should have been expanded in the first place, but if you do have it, you got to get them off as quickly as possible so that they don't remain in a permanent kind of safety hammock rather than a safety trampoline to get people really jumping up. You want them jumping back off of this thing. So this is a way of trying to get them acclimated to it so that when they probably go into the exchange, which is probably what the next step would be, if you do get a job on Medicaid and you start getting up to that level of the federal poverty level, you can actually move into the exchange. And you're still getting subsidized care, and there's a whole bunch of problems with the Obamacare exchanges, make no mistake. But they're saying we need these people to understand how to do it, and that it does start a process of engendering some level of personal responsibility. It's better than not doing it, I guess is what I would say.
Right. We understand, and it's just just a question of balance. I know you've got a meeting you've got to go to, and I promised to get you out of here on time. So I thank you for joining us and explaining that. Folks, go to the Buckeye Institute's website. Tons of information there. And when this clears up, Greg, I'll have you or Robert back, and we'll talk a little more in depth.
Well, there's a lot more to talk about with school choice, with education funding, and that it continues to grow. Despite there not being academic outcomes that validate the notion that we need to continue to just spend more.
Yeah.
It's more about how we spend rather than the vast quantities that we spend. There's a lot of things embedded in this budget. And like you said, here's the other key thing to think. It is growing. It is still growing. And don't let anybody tell you that it's not. There'll be some hype that this is a real fiscally conservative budget. But you're spending more on education, and you did the Medicaid expansion. By definition, under those circumstances, you can't say that you're controlling those costs. You may be controlling costs that you chose to take.
Right. Well, we sure appreciate you joining us, Greg. We'll get you back on again. You're listening to Tea Party Talk with Tom Z. We'll be back after these messages.
Giriotis, president of S&K Asphalt and Concrete. As a Greek immigrant who came to America legally, my family and I have lived the American dream of freedom, hope, and opportunity. But that dream is fading due to an out-of-control federal government that is mixed up worse than a soup sandwich. We have a president who is putting more and more regulations on businesses, which is stomping economic and job growth. Government has taken more and more of our freedoms. They have taken over our health care and are trying to take over our schools with Common Core. We as Americans must wake up. Get involved before it is too late. We must fight to preserve the America our founders created, a nation that was founded on faith, family, and freedom. The fight is not easy, but anything worth fighting for never is. Our founders paid a heavy price for freedom. 5 of them did not live to see the independence they were fighting for. 9 of them were tortured. 12 of them lost everything they owned, and 3 of them lost their families. Now it is our turn to sacrifice and to fight to preserve our freedoms and the American dream. I am Nick Skiriotis, president of S&K Asphalt and Concrete, and I approve this message.
Hi, this is Amanda from Realize FAC. Are you a prepper? Do you know one? We're holding our first annual Preppers Ball at the Arena Complex in Talmadge. $10,000 worth of prizes, food, drinks, speakers, networking. Realize FAC has it all. Pick up your tickets in person at the Fin, Feather, and Fur or a Grape and Granary, or go to the link that TomZ provides after this message.
Fed up with politicians who care more about special interests than people on Main Street? So is Opportunity Ohio. We're working hard to solve Ohio's toughest challenges so Ohioans can create more jobs to grow our economy. See our plans and consider a tax-deductible contribution at opportunityohio.org. Invest $25 for a signed copy of Matt Mayer's book, The Founding Debate, Where Should the Power Over Our Lives Reside? Please visit opportunityohio.org.
All right, and we are back, and we thank Greg Lawson for joining us and talking about the state budget. Those of you who are interested in the Preppers Ball, by the way, if you go to teapartytalkwithtomz.com, you'll see a link there that says click here to get your tickets, so you can do that at teapartytalkwithtomz.com. You can also donate to help keep the show on the air. We are about to sign our renewal of our contract, so if you want to help pay for the show, you can do so by clicking on the donate link at teapartytalkwithtomz.com. Greg, was great explaining the state budget and some of the questions we have, and there'll be more to it. But his closing comments, you need to really understand. Nothing's going down. This is not a conservative budget. Governor Kasich is continuing to tax and spend, and he tries to play these games where I'm going to give you, the people listening to this show, we're going to cut your personal income tax, the state income tax. Well, folks, the cuts he's talking about are like $25 per person per year. But then he's going to, raise these taxes on cigarettes and on businesses and on the oil and gas industry. And the budget just keeps growing. So, don't be fooled. We always say here, don't believe the lies, and you've got to know the truth. And we'll have Greg back on to do some more analysis once some of these things become clear. And we expect the Republicans in the Ohio House and Senate to push back on the governor, but he is continuing to bully people and push to have his way. And it's really pretty ugly scene here in Columbus, in the state of Ohio, to have someone who basically acts like he's a dictator and doesn't consult anyone and just does whatever he wants to do to pick winners and losers. And so that's why we keep you informed about that. We do want to talk about the federal budget. As you know, when the president put his $4 trillion budget on the table Monday as well, and most people are calling this a political statement, not a real budget, and it really is. It's basically trying to, again, all things are politics to Barack Obama. He doesn't know how to govern or administrate. He's a community organizer, and that's why he's always out on the campaign trail, even when he's not campaigning. And so basically he's not concerned about the country or our defense or anything like that. He's concerned about keeping power and setting the table for the 2016 election. And quite frankly, it's just shameful. For him to even put a budget up, and it's a $4 trillion budget, folks, $4 trillion. Well, the budget when he took office in 2009 was $2.3 trillion. Think about that. $2.3 trillion to $4 trillion in just 6 years. And this is what's just amazing. The federal tax revenues, okay, what we as taxpayers pay is up $1 trillion. We were paying $2.3 trillion, and now we're paying $3.4 trillion, and it's not enough. It's not enough. They're still going to tax us more, like $240 billion more. They want to raise taxes on people, okay? And then they're going to overspend by $475 billion, $474 billion. So they have $1 trillion more of your and my money, and that's still not enough. And they're going to still borrow $500 billion more. When this president took office, the national debt was $10.67 trillion. Today it's almost $18 trillion, and there's 2 years left to go. 2 more years left to go. So we're going to double. This one president is going to double our debt. And here's the scary part. Our gross domestic product, what you and I create every year by working, the gross domestic product is our collective effort. What we generate is about $16.7 trillion. $16.7 trillion a year. Our national debt exceeds what we produce in a year. Think about that. That's staggering. That's insane. And you know what the sad part is? The Republicans will go along with it. The Republicans and all the K-Street people and all the people who get that money, it's like a feeding frenzy. It's like sharks with blood in the water. There's money to be had, folks, and it's your and my money. It's your and my money, okay? And this is what's frightening. So the president will be so disingenuous to say that we got to get rid of sequestration because it's killed. So he wants to completely get rid of sequestration. But then at the end of the year, he was talking about his success and how they had cut the government spending, which came from sequestration. You can't have it both ways. Sequestration was a good idea that the political people in Washington, Republicans and Democrats alike, made into a bad idea because they didn't apply sequestration intelligently. They did it across the board, and that's hurting defense. But the president isn't going to raise $235 billion more by taxing us to help with defense. No. He's going to use it for other of his domestic programs. He's going to redistribute your wealth. It's just shameful, folks. It's just shameful. I want to move on to another topic. We lost a good friend. Some of you may remember I had Dr. Timothy Johnson, who was a co-founder of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, on with us back in September when we were getting ready for the We the People convention. And he passed away at age 50. He had diabetes, and he passed away last Friday. And we're very sorry to hear that. We've expressed our condolences to his family. He leaves 4 grown children and some grandchildren behind. And I just went back and I reviewed the video. And if you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, as you know, We the People Convention is a sponsor of this show. That's why we have the show. I'm the president of the We the People Convention. If you just go to wethepeopleconvention.org and on the front page, click on the video of Dr. Tim Johnson. What an amazing man. What a tremendous person who helped us understand, how we've got to get rid of this, this whole thing about us and them, and how we as conservatives, have friends in the minorities. And he always said, I'm not a minority. He said, I don't believe I'm a minority. I'm not an African American. I've never been to Africa. I'm an American. And he was. He's a great American. And we're going to miss him dearly. And so I encourage you to go and watch that video because he really made some great points. And so just go to wethepeopleconvention.org and watch Dr. Tim Johnson. And we say goodbye to our good friend who was preceded by another good friend, the former state director for Frederick Douglass Foundation in Ohio, Brenda Mack, who passed away tragically last year at a very young age. It's just devastating. But we've still got our good friend William Green, the current president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation in Ohio, and we pledge to work with William and continue to take Dr. Johnson's legacy and continue it forward. So we say goodbye with sadness to our friend Dr. Tim Johnson. I did want to make you aware of something else that's going to be happening here in Ohio. It's come to our attention that Americans for Prosperity is going to be bringing their annual national event, the Defending the American Dream Summit, to Columbus, Ohio, this August 18th through the 22nd. Now, this is a big deal, folks. They're expecting 3,500 attendees from all over the nation. They've booked up about every hotel in Columbus, and it's going to be at the convention center downtown. And I'm sure they'll be bringing all the top presidential candidates here to Ohio. So that shows you again, once again, how important Ohio is. Because of that, we're not sure what we're going to do with the We the People convention this year. A lot of you have been asking, when are we going to have our convention? And we were planning to have it this summer, maybe in June or July. But we also know you have limited time and limited money. So we're going to see if AFP reaches out to the liberty groups in the state, the Ohio Liberty Coalition, some of the other groups like the We People Convention, to see if we can do something with them. We haven't had the greatest of relationships with AFP in recent months and maybe last year and a half, but maybe they'll reach out. We'll work with anybody that's willing to help us advance the conservative cause, but put August 18th through 22nd on your calendar for Columbus, because that's going to be a big event, and you may want to participate in that. I do want to tie up a few other loose ends. We had talked about the King versus Burwell Supreme Court ruling that is going to be happening in June. And this is the one where the Supreme Court is going to rule about the fact that the law, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, says that no subsidies can be given to people who get their Medicare, their Obamacare through the federal exchange. And only 14 states have a state exchange, and Ohio does not. We have a federal exchange. And what this is going to do is this is going to show people what Obamacare really costs, because you and I won't be subsidizing their health care. And you know what's going to happen? They're not going to be able to afford it, because the cost of Obamacare is outrageous. It isn't the Affordable Health Care Act. All the stocks for big hospitals and pharmaceutical companies are going through the roof. Their profits are through the roof, because Obamacare basically is a gift to hospitals. All right? It's a gift to hospitals. And they're making money hand over fist, and our costs have gone up. So here's the problem. This could be the greatest thing that happens. Like I've predicted, it will be the end of Obamacare. But if the Republicans don't act in the next few months, it won't work. It won't work. They have to show leadership, because guess what? Once those people can't afford Obamacare, they're going to want what? An answer. And we're going to have to give them something that really is affordable. And so this is the challenge that the Republicans face. And I think that, they need to step up to the plate, and we'll see if they do that on several issues like the immigration issue. And by the way, the U.S. House voted to repeal Obamacare this week. Now, we'll see where that goes. It's probably not going anywhere, but at least they finally did vote to repeal it, and I know they are working on some answers. So that's an important thing as well. Last thing I want to say to you, and I'm showing a picture on the web that's a little disturbing, but you need to look at the picture. Because I said last week about how bad the fall of Yemen was and how serious the challenge from ISIS is. And yesterday, ISIS burned alive a Jordanian pilot and killed him. These are the kind of animals that we're dealing with, and they must be defeated. They cannot be reasoned with. And so, I wanted to, give our condolences to the family of that Jordanian fighter. And, and I want to say to the people on the left, they tell us that waterboarding is torture. And ISIS is burning people alive. If you can't tell the difference between those two things, if you think we're an evil country and they're not, you're just a fool, right? And you're certainly not a patriot. I want to close the show with a couple of things that are going on that I think are really important. The Portage County Tea Party will be having our next monthly meeting at Maplewood Career Center in Ravenna on Thursday, February 12th at 7 p.m. We ask you to join us there. And the Summit County Tea Party is doing something really cool. They're doing a 2016 presidential straw poll and fundraiser. It's going to be at the Red Fox Bar and Grill at 1767 State Road in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, on Tuesday, March 3rd, starting at 6:30 p.m. The cost for tickets is $20 per individual and $35 per couple. And we'll do our own straw poll, and we'll see what the Tea Party people and conservatives, who we want for president on the Republican ticket. So that'll be a lot of fun. Summit County Tea Party's presidential straw poll and fundraiser, March 3rd. I'll tell you more about this in weeks to come. You've been listening to Tea Party Talk with Tom Z. I'm so glad that you joined us again this morning, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you will always remember that we, the people, are in charge. We can do whatever we set our minds to, and this is our country, and we need to defend it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week.